Good evening, everyone. My name is Miss Reed, the founder of DaaamnDaddy.com, where daddy issues drive discussion, and this is the discussion room. This evening, we have the pleasure of having an international guest, KyShon Johnson, who is on study abroad in Rome, is going to share with us her mission of the 100 Other Halves movement, what got her started, what keeps her going, and what's next with it. Hi, KyShon. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So, for those who are unfamiliar, tell us a little bit about 100 Other Halves.
Sure. So 100 Other Halves is a platform for women of all ages to discuss the impact of their father's love, whether the relationship was positive, negative, or non-existent. I'm going through my own journey and trying to figure out my relationship with my father and how it impacted me. And so the best way to really go about this journey is to talk to other women who's on the same journey. And so I created this platform for us to share our stories, get to know each other, and help each other through healing.
Okay, so you mentioned that you are currently on your own journey. Tell us what your journey has been like, and at what point did you decide that you needed to reach out to other women?
Yeah, so I my father was in and out of my life since I was younger. He was incarcerated on and off throughout my life, and it wasn't until I studied abroad in Spain where I realized that other people have fathers. My friends around me didn't have their fathers in their lives. My family members didn't have fathers, so there wasn't a presence of fatherhood or males around me. And so when I studied abroad and everybody had a father and an uncle and a grandfather, I was like, wow, I didn't know this kind of family unit existed. And I really wanted to know how it impacted me, the fact that I didn't have it. And so I was 17 then. So when I got back home, I was really interested in it. I would do a little research. I took a psychology class and I learned about it then. But then I kind of just put it behind me. And as I was dating and I kind of was in these unhealthy relationships, whether it was my partners being unhealthy or me being unhealthy, I realized that I may have had some issues. And so I bought this book, and it was called The Fatherless Daughter Project. And I read the first page and I started bawling, crying. And I was like, well, okay, KyShon, some issues may be resurfacing. And so I started to really read. I journaled about it. I did some research. And then I was like, I want to hear if other girls are going through this too. And I also wanted to share, what I was kind of learning. So as I was reading, I would call up my friends like, oh my gosh, you guys, and they would be like, if you talk to me about this one more time. And so I wanted to create a platform for other women to speak, and I wanted it to be an opportunity for me to share that knowledge with them. And so that happened. I had the idea May 2017, and I didn't launch the project until August 2017. And I was able to meet with 100 women in 4 months, and so I wrapped up my interviews around Christmas time, right before the new year.
Wow, that's a lot. So you mentioned that your friends were kind of like, girl, if you call me one more time, is
Yes.
that what gave you the courage to just put it out there and open it up to 100 women wherever you could find them?
I guess that wouldn't have been. I knew that the reason why I wanted to keep sharing this information with them was because I was passionate about it, and so that was really what sparked my fire. Like I said, I bought a book, and I read books a lot, but I chose that book. Like I went online and chose books about women who do not have fathers, fatherless daughters, which is a term I don't like to use, fatherless daughters, because I feel like it's a label. But yeah, that's it. I'm just really passionate about it, and it just makes it even better that it really hits close to home for me.
So what are some of the things that you really wanted to share, the points that were resonating with you that you felt that you must share with other women? I know as an educator, we are constantly trying to choose texts that have real world connections for our students. And it seemed like this text really brought a lot out in you. So what are some of those things that resonated with you that you had to share?
And so the number one thing that I wanted to really get across, and this is why I opened it up to women who have positive relationships, negative relationships, but also non-existent. I really just wanted to get out there that like an absence is still a relationship. In every relationship, you learn something about yourself, or you lose something, or you gain something. Like something comes out of every single relationship. And so for my own story, like I said, I was 17 when I first saw a father-daughter, a positive father-daughter relationship. So that means 17 years not have a positive relationship with my father. That was an absent relationship. But little did I know that was still a relationship. And so when it came to me dating, I dated people who were emotionally unavailable. I've dated people who lived in different states. You know, like any form of absentee or absentness or whatever the correct word is for that, I was attracted to it because that was the relationship that I had. And so when I really started to dig deep and figure out the ways that I was neglected or I was abandoned, I really wanted other women to do that work as well, especially since I've always just had women come up to me because I was always very professional. And so that was another thing that was very critical with 100 Other platforms before, that they were all professional. So I have an event called Boardroom Exclusive. It's a business event. I had no executives. It was a professional platform. And so I was always very professional. So people would come to me and talk to me about how they were inspired and things like that. But they would say, like, my relationship or my love life sucks. And when I started doing the work for myself, I just wanted to share with them, like, you know, you have to do the work on yourself. And doing the work on yourself means you have to dig deep. And so that's what those conversations were about 100 Other Halves, was just having women really understand that in order to do the self-work on yourself, you can't do self-work on the outside, on the surface. That just makes it look pretty. So when people say, oh, I did a self-care day and I got my hair done and my nails done, that's still on the surface. When you're doing the self-work to really figure out how to make you, your relationship with yourself and your relationship with others stronger, you have to dig deep. And digging deep may make you come to terms with your childhood. And that involves your relationship with your father and your relationship with your mother. And so to revert back to the question, number one, I wanted them to know that absence is a relationship and you do have to deal with what you learned, lost, or gained from that. Number two, that in order to do the self-work on yourself, you have to dig deep and you have to face some of those childhood traumas you may have experienced. And then number three, I wanted to just have them become comfortable with talking about it. Like, that was the number one thing. I talk to girls all the time. We talk about boys, we talk about business, we talk about school, money, makeup. We never talk about our fathers. And for the women who do have fathers in their life, they told me that every decision that they've made, from small to big, their father was incorporated in it. So now, how about the women who don't have their fathers? Who was behind all of our decision making? What kind of mistakes did we make because we didn't have the presence of that father? And so I just really love that when I would meet with some of the women, the first question I would ask them is, how often do you discuss your relationship with your father? And almost 75% of them said never. Like, you're the first person. And another stat, almost 75% of the women that I've spoken to, I never met before. So the fact that you will open up to a complete stranger about something you never talked about before, that was the key driver that I wanted, to let them know that it's okay to talk about it. And in order to do that self-work, you have to talk about it.
You touched on so many different interesting points there. I know, we're doing similar work, trying to get people to open up about their relationships with their dad. And I've reached a lot of pushback because people are like, I don't want to talk about it. Before even having a podcast, it was really an uncomfortable subject for a lot of people, whether they had fathers who are present, absent, or not such a great relationship. Definitely more voluntary for those who had great fathers, and it was more so, oh, I don't have the time to talk about that. Not that they don't want to, but what you said that I really wanted to discuss was how women who have present fathers have that support in decision making, whereas women who don't have their fathers present in their lives, what kind of decision making do they make? What were some of the findings that you had? Did you have that conversation with the women you interviewed?
Yeah, and so the funny thing was that the women who, and this was crazy to me, the majority of the women that I spoke to, maybe 40 out of the 100 women. So when I say percent, it's just super easy because it's out of 100. So it's like 40%. But the women who did have fathers, majority of them were single. And they were single because they said, I know exactly what I want in a man, and I'm not settling for anything less. And the majority of the women who didn't have fathers in their life were in relationships, and we would spend the majority of our conversation discussing how their relationship is unhealthy, how they want to get out of it, or how they keep dating the same kind of guys. And so one of the key things that I really saw was that the key thing was really just, and I love, a lot of single mothers. like even my mother didn't get a boyfriend from what I saw until I was like 14. And so that means for the first 14 years of my life, I didn't see any positive interaction between a man and a woman. And so what happens at 14? I'm in high school. So what do people start doing? They start dating, they start having sex, you know, things like that. So imagine you're in high school, you're 14, and you've never even seen a positive, you know, female or male interaction before, but you're yearning for that and you're seeing it. So what do you start to do? You just jump right in. And before you know, you're making certain mistakes and you have to learn the hard way about certain things, and or you're just confused. Like, you don't, does this mean that he likes me or he doesn't? Does this mean that I like him or I don't? You have no idea. And so that was one of the key things that I really saw from the girls who did not have a father, whether he was absent, whether he passed away, whether it just wasn't a positive relationship. We've just made a lot of different mistakes from just trial and error and just not knowing. And then also a lot of patterns, because it's just like when you go into something blinded, you know, you do the one thing, it doesn't work, you think it's the person, and then you do it again, doesn't work, you think it's that person. The whole time it's you that's making the bad decisions, or not bad decisions, but not the best decisions. Whereas though the women, one of the reasons why the majority of the women who did have fathers weren't in a relationship was because they saw that interaction between their mother and their father, or their father and their stepmother. Like, they knew what love was supposed to look like and what it wasn't. And so, yes, they said, listen, I'm not perfect. I still get played by guys. You know, I still get my heart broken. I still make dumb decisions, but I know that it's wrong and I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm veering off on the wrong track. My father can, you know, check me. I know one girl said that she called her dad devastated, like, Dad, he didn't show up. And her dad was like, oh, it's because he's not into you. And she was like, wait, what? And she's like, he's like, oh, he's just not into you. Here's why. He did this, and this. And she just was like, oh, and she just stopped talking to the guy. Imagine if you didn't have that. You would just, what do? We then internalize it. Why didn't he show up? Because I'm not good enough. Why didn't he show up? Because I'm not lovable. You know, all these things. And then if you have a pattern of keep dating a guy who has these same traits, you keep feeling those same things. You begin to internalize it and you begin to believe it. And so that was definitely some similarities that I saw between the two. The second thing that I would say is that the women who did have fathers, they all said, like, I'm way closer with my father than I am with my mother. Like, I get my personality from my father. We have the same humor. We connect. We laugh. He gets me. I'll talk to him. And obviously, the women who didn't have fathers, they were all like, my mom is my rock. My mom is my best friend. And I would always laugh at the girls who did have fathers. Like, imagine if your father wasn't there, God forbid. And they're like, wait, so it would just be me and my mother? And I'm like, yeah, that's a lot of our realities, you know? And even you, prior to this, you said, oh, I was just on the phone with my mother. Like, we build that bond with them because, you know, that's who's there. So I thought that was also really interesting as well.
That, I'm laughing because I was thinking the same thing. Like, yes, I was just on the phone with my mom, and then in recent months, I've been trying to rebuild my relationship with my father. And I know a couple days ago, a while back, I had reached out to him and I said, hey, I have been thinking about you. I just don't have anything to say to you. But, you know, just know that it's not like I hit you up that one time and I don't have any other words. It's just I don't know what we need to talk about.
Right.
I was thinking about him the other day, and he had texted me and he said, hey, how was everything going with the snowstorm? How you doing? So it just made me feel better that I don't feel like I'm the only one initiating contact. But sometimes I feel guilty because I'm in a routine. I call my mom. I call the young man I'm dating. I call my grandparents. You know, those are my list of people. I might call my aunt or my uncle every now and then. But it's not a natural thing for me to call my father. I'm not in the habit of doing that. Even my stepfather, at my stepsister's wedding, I kind of had a meltdown. And since then, every couple of weeks or so, he's checking on me. He wants me to know, like, I still care about you. Good. Do you need anything when you're coming up? So I am appreciative that this experience has helped me navigate that. But I do think that when you only have a mom, for some people, you get super duper close to your mom. I think I only became close to my mom more so in adulthood.
Yeah.
Before then, I was like, why is she always here? I was really close to my uncle. I was really close to my uncle. Like, my uncle was like, I had that dad relationship with him.
Yeah,
that's good. Can I stay with you? Do I have to go live with her? So I get that, how I kind of get the best of both worlds. How some women who had their dads was like, what? It would just be me and my mom. I get that. So along those same lines, how was your relationship with your mother, and what made you realize that, other than your trip, you know, that maybe you didn't have the best relationship with your dad?
Yeah, my relationship with my mother is really good. I'm like a mini her. And so everyone always says and I'm really in the zodiac signs, and I'm a Scorpio and she's a Cancer. So we're both water signs, very emotional. We're usually on the same wavelength with the way we're thinking, the way we feel. Growing up, my mother, she raised myself and my two siblings by herself. She got an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. She purchased a home, and she graduated all those times with straight A's. So just seeing her let me know that I kind of grew up like superwoman. Like nothing was ever impossible. And it also made me work very hard, because obviously if a mother is raising 3 children on her own, in school, working full time, I think my mother always had 2 jobs, a full-time job, a part-time job, in school and raising 3 children. So it was just like, listen, you guys have everything that you need, anything that you want, you're on your own with. And so I had my first job at 13. So pretty much what my mother instilled was hard work, dedication, and pretty much the impossible is always possible. And nothing in terms of my mother's relationship made me realize that I was lacking anything with my father. Like I said, I didn't see anyone with a father, so I didn't know that that was even an option or a possibility. It became almost normal to me and my friends to just not have fathers. But prior to my trip, I would say when I was 12, I think 11 or 12, I went to a friend's house, and she had a father. And her dad, and I'd never seen him because he was a police officer, so he was never there, and her parents weren't married. But her father like opened the door, she ran to him, they started play fighting, they started dancing, they were really interacting. And at the time my father was home from jail. And so my father picked me up. I told him, I'm in the car, I'm twiddling my fingers, I'm like, I really want to tell him what I just saw. That really just struck a nerve in me, because he was in and out of jail. We didn't really have that bond or that closeness. And then also, I would say that I was more like my mother, very like into the books, only wanted to talk if it was about something of substance, didn't really humor. But my father, he was more, I would say like hood, more street smart. And so for anything, he looked at me like, I'm worried about this girl. She is not street smart. She's book smart type of thing. So we already didn't have that much of a bond. So when I saw my friend and her father interacting, I was like, oh, I want that. And so the whole ride home, I'm silent because I'm thinking about how to bring this up to him. And then finally he pulls over, and I'm about to get in the car, and I'm like, Dad, my friend, her dad came over, and they just had so much fun together, and they were play fighting and laughing. And I was like, maybe me and you could do that one day. And he just like blacked out. Like he was like, you want somebody else to be your father? Like he just, internalized it and turned it all on me. And I'm already timid, so I'm already thinking, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said it, beating myself up about it. And so many things resonate with me in that moment. One, it let me know at the age of 11 or 12, I realized that there was an absence of fatherhood, and it was something that I wanted. Two, I realized that my father wasn't in the position to have that conversation with me, and he wasn't in the position to honestly face himself and see that he wasn't building a relationship with his daughters due to him being in and out of prison. And then three, I also realized that at such a young age, I don't get with males all the time, and the one time I do, I get vocalize how I feel, and you shut me down. So, and I just think as a young woman, that was a terrible experience for me, because years later I will work in the sports industry, in the corporate world, I have to interact with men, and I'm not as confident voicing my opinion. I'm not as confident. And so I know we talk a lot about relationships, like romantic relationships, and how your father's relationship impacts that. But I learned more so in the professional world how it impacted that as well. And this was even before my trip. I had an internship, and I realized that every time we were in a meeting, and let's say it was 3 of my bosses were males, 2 of them were women, I would always wait until it was only the women in the room to share like my opinion or my idea. And the crazy part is my male bosses were very chill, very lax. Like if I told them an idea, they would probably say, let's go with it, you know? And then the women were more so very strict, very hard. And so if I told them an idea, they would probably make me break it down, present it to them. So you would think that I would just be more comfortable with that. But to me, it was a female interaction and a male interaction. I didn't have much male interactions in my life. And the one time I did, I had that interaction with my father that really shut me down. And so I thought that was a really defining moment as well, because I started to notice, like, I can't even voice my opinion until all the men leave the room. And so that's just little ways that as a child, I started to realize the way that it impacted me. So I didn't have a direct impact or effect from my mother's relationship, but prior to my trip to Spain, little things were happening around me.
I think that is the perfect example of what it means to do the self-work, because those are things that I hadn't realized until I started doing this blog and talking to other people, more so teaching. I think teaching in itself pulled a lot out of me, because as adults, we always are in the mindset, oh, I didn't act like that as a kid. And then I realized that I want to be honest, that I agree that the school to prison pipeline exists. So when I was working in public school, I was very cautious of the things that I was abiding by. I don't care about 100% compliance. They're not prisoners. If they are following the rules, as long as they're not a danger to themselves or others, I don't care if you are 2 centimeters to the left of the person in front of you, like different things like that. So I realized that I had grown up being compliant, following the rules, being respectful, knowing when to speak and when not to speak, and not necessarily knowing that it's okay to speak out of turn if you are defending others. So different lessons like that I learned more so through the experience of teaching. And I would share with my mom, my aunt, or my uncle, like, hey, XYZ happened at work today, and it made me realize that you all taught me this, that, and the third, and you did me a disservice because I should be more vocal. So, so I'm glad that you are sharing that, because I don't think that everybody is reflective enough to realize, and that's a part of the reason that I am so passionate about this podcast and doing this blog, is because our childhood experiences really do shape how we show up in the world. Like, nobody would really think that one experience with your father would be the impact you have in the boardroom. And you probably have your male bosses like, oh, she's too timid, she never has any ideas. Meanwhile, you have tons of ideas just waiting to pour out. So I'm glad you shared that.
For sure.
Something else I want to discuss. I do talk a lot about romantic relationships, and you mentioned 2 things. One, that you felt like you had been in some unhealthy relationships. So I would like you to give me an idea of, unhealthy how. You said sometimes on your partner's behalf, sometimes on your behalf. And then something else that was pertinent that you touched on was not seeing your mom be in a romantic relationship until you were 14. And I know for me, I've blogged about how my mom's relationships really shaped how I looked at things, similar to the women I was one of those women. So, but similar to the women you have interviewed, and just knowing what I want and realizing like, nope, I didn't like that. I didn't like that. I didn't like that. But I like this relationship she had with this person, or I like this piece of it. So just once you finally were able to see that, were you even paying attention to it? Because by then you were already curious on how to make it work yourself.
Yeah, so I'll kind of do the second question and go into the first, but I'll say that, when my mom got into the relationship when I was maybe 14 or 15, maybe a little younger, but the point is that I think the first thing, I was shocked. I was very accepting of this relationship, because I knew that she probably, really jumped through some hoops for this to be right with this guy. I looked at her as choosy. Like, wow, she really took her time choosing the right guy. I remember how nervous she was in the beginning, like when the guy, he dropped, this is insane, but my mom gave him the okay to drop us off at school. And we looked back, so he's driving us to school, me and my sister, and we looked back, my mom's following him. So my mom gave him So she like trusted him enough to take us to school, but not that much. Obviously that was, but so what I learned very early on was how to learn to trust yourself as you are falling into it with someone. And I liked how picky she was. Like, I really admired that she didn't just jump into anything. However, yeah, seeing their relationship, some of the cool things about him was that he cooked. And so that was already a gender norm that was kind of slashed in half for me, because I'm like, wow, God, and he cooked well. And so it was almost like when I came home and my mom said she was cooking, we were like, oh, come on, like, can you cook, And so it was like little things like that. I was really into sports, and so it was really cool to have a guy around who I could talk about sports with. And it was also interesting because my mom didn't like sports and he liked sports, but I got to see my mom was very thoughtful, so she always tried to buy him thoughtful gifts. So he really liked Michael Jordan. That's all he wore. That was the only clothing line he wore. And so they had to go to some event, so she brought him a button up by Michael Jordan's clothing line. And so it seems like a small detail, but I learned women can be thoughtful. It doesn't always have to be about being romantic in like a sexy way, or in gender roles in terms of cooking for him or cleaning for him, which I would see in movies. It was cool to just see her be thoughtful, like, okay, he needs a button up, but he only wears the Jordan brand, so I'm going to search high and low for a Jordan brand button up. So it was little things like that. Like, I didn't get to see a lot of the details into their relationship, but it was cool to just pick up those little things. I guess I more so picked up things from my mother. Like, I really just watched closely on how she handled the situation. And if they got into a disagreement, I felt like my mother was too, once I think they got into an, I was like, why she didn't stand, I felt like she should have stood up for herself a little more. But then, later in life, I learned that you pick your battles. Like, certain things just aren't meant. And like I said, I'm into signs, I'm a Scorpio, so everything is an attack to me. So I'm just always ready for war at all times. And so that was something else I learned from my mother in a relationship, was that, you pick your battles. Everything is not World War II. You know what I'm saying? You just kind of take it on the chin and you keep it moving. But in terms of my relation, that was the only relationship I've ever seen my mom in. I think she's dating now, and my siblings and I, we're older, and we're still like, ew, like, you're going on dates. Like, we aren't accepting of this whole thing. We're very possessive over her. But in terms of my own unhealthy relationships, I'm still unpacking that. I've taken 2018 to be single because I'm just trying to figure out, where the hell am I going wrong, And so one of the key things that I've learned is that I am, and I said this earlier, I'm very attracted to unavailable guys. Unavailable guys can just mean, I know that when I was younger, like my first like 2 boyfriends in high school, they were guys that I met them and they were like, man, I don't care about love. I'm never going to fall in love. I don't like Valentine's Day. And I would be like, ooh, he doesn't care about love. He doesn't know what love is. And when I say I will put in the work, I will put in the work to basically change him from a guy who didn't care about love to the most romantic guy that you've ever met. And it seemed, like, it was almost like he was a project that I was determined to work on. And I'm still trying to figure out my thought process in that, but I can say my last 3 or 4 relationships, it's been that. I would meet a guy who was like a C average, and I would turn him into an A plus. And it was like, I just liked putting in the work to get someone to love me, which I think is sick as I say that out loud. But I put in the work. Like, I remember my ex-boyfriend's best friend just called me. Maybe 2 years ago, he called me, and we had broken up 3 years ago. But he was just like, man, I just want you guys to get back together, because when you guys were together, he had a car, he had a job, he had a house, he had all these things. And it sounds so, like it was like a trophy to me. But when you think about it, I was literally just going after people who wouldn't be able to love me. And I was trying to convince myself and convince them that they could love me. And it was just like, why is that something we're attracted to? And even now, as I'm dating, like, I may see a guy that I find attractive that is paying me no mind, and then I would just start to put in the work to make him notice me. But like subtly. So I'm not going to like send him, message him, things like that. I would just basically set up the bait for him to come after me. But it's like, why? Like, why are you so attracted to people who are completely unavailable to you? With guys who are totally available to you, but they're just not attractive to you. And I think that's very unhealthy. And it's unhealthy because it says something about the way that I feel about myself, that I'm only attracted to people that I have to convince my worth. That's the key word, that I need to convince people. And other unhealthy things, one, during relationships, I was the girl. I needed a lot of reassurance. So if a guy did something wrong, I would break up with him right there. And then I would watch to see how hard he will work to get me back. Again, it's work. And like, relationships are already hard work. So if you are purposely making the relationship work, again, now I'm wondering, why do you purposely make these relationships hard work on your end and his end? But I just needed him to prove all the time that he loved me or he cared about me. So I was that girl that was just like, I'm done. Rejection was really hard for me. Any form of rejection. You don't want to post me on your social media. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. You need space. I was just such an unhealthy partner. But I can say that I've always dated very amazing guys who genuinely loved me so much. So they would just put up with it. And now that I'm older, I'm just like, if my son ever dated some girl like that. But yeah, so those were just some of the key things. Needing a lot of reassurance, needing, like, being very dependent, and really just being attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable. Those were some of my biggest things that were really tough for me.
So just based on the conversation we've been having this evening,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like, because what you saw in your mom was that she was a hard worker, is that you want relationships to be hard work because that's your area of comfort. You work hard in school, you work hard at work, you are comfortable with hard work in general. So that's just something that stood out to me, as well as in my own experience, as far as, the way you feel about yourself being a reflection of your relationship with your father. So for me, I gave it a term. I like to date intellectual assholes. Because all I heard my whole life was how smart my father is. My sister's father is brilliant, but they're kind of jerks. They're just being honest, And for me, I have a dismissive personality when it comes to relationships. Like, somebody said something to me about relationships the other day and traveling, and I said, either we go together or I'll tell him about it when I get back. And she was like, no, if you're in a relationship, and I'm like, listen, I'm not going to force anybody to do anything they don't want to do. We go together or I'll tell you about it when I get back, but I'm not going to not go because of you. And I think something I picked up on from my mom and from my father figures, their lack of desire to travel and do things, is I can do it by myself. I'd rather you come with me, but you can stay here. And just like you said, you would dismiss them and want them to work hard. For me, I think in the person I've been seeing recently, what we had to learn about each other is, I told them several times, I don't want to be with anybody who doesn't want to be with me. So if I say I'm done, I'll still have feelings for you, but I'm not going to engage in that back and forth because I had my own issues with rejection. So just listening to you, it sounds like what that relationship was like with your dad, and wanting him to have a similar relationship to what you saw your friend had. You yearn for that, and that's what you're trying to create in your relationships.
Yeah, it's sick. It's definitely sick. So I realized it, and I'm missing one key point, and I can't think about it right now. But I really just think the key to mine was just, like I said, absence is a relationship. And so, although I wasn't dating guys who were physically absent, I was seeking guys who were psychologically maybe absent, mentally absent, or their heart just wasn't in it all the way. And I would just go hard for them. And I can say, as a child, I worked very hard for my father's relationship. I was one of the only ones who always wrote him. We always did phone calls. And so we were always like in communication in some way. And I made sure I put forth that extra effort. And I think that sent me the wrong message also as a child. It made me feel like a relationship can only work based off of my hard work. And I've seen that a lot when I would talk to women of 100 Other Halves. They would always feel like the success of the relationship with their father was their responsibility. Like, if I don't call him, if I don't have this conversation with him, if I don't go see him. One girl said that her father moved from Philadelphia to Atlanta, so she got a job working at Subway, and she would use her checks that she made on the weekend to go fly to see her dad. And she couldn't figure out why now, as an adult, she's only been in long-distance relationships where she only goes to see the guy. And she was like, wow, I never even put two and two together. And I was like, yes. Don't you ever wonder why your father didn't come fly to, he's a grown man that just got a job in Atlanta. He couldn't fly to Philadelphia to come to your graduation, your recital, to see you on the weekend. And it's little things like that. And so that's what I also loved about 100 Other Halves. And even you and I having this conversation is that women really get that aha moment where they're like, oh, snaps. Like, I didn't even see the correlation between my romantic relationships and my relationship with my father. So, yeah, still unpacking, still working on it.
I think that it's a very honest activity for you to be intentionally single, because I think that's not something that we practice. A lot of people talk about this is my season of singleness. That, like, a lot of my friends that I went to college with, we talk about these different types of things, but rarely does it come across that we are intentionally single.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
even for myself, it's like I'm not dating anybody and I'm not looking to date anybody, but if somebody so happens to come along, I'm open to it. So you know, I think being intentionally single is a very brave activity, because it forces you to do that self-reflection, that self-work, and to learn what your, I want to say triggers, because the environment I work in.
Yeah, that's my word. I always talk
your
about
triggers are, but also what your desires are in a relationship. Like, the person I had been dating, I'm like, I made them take the love languages quiz the other day while they were, and I had taken it a while back and sent it to them, and we discussed it, but I knew based on the conversation that they had not taken the quiz, even though they said they did, and just getting to know why we like the things we like. Both of us had quality time at the top. And I know for me, I like quality time because my mother spent quality time with me. My uncle spent quality time with me. That's something I didn't really feel like I had access to from my biological father. But my first stepfather and I, we did things together where those are some of my fondest memories. Like, oh, this was our thing. You know, even cooking, that was our thing. You know, in the kitchen, we had the turn up of the year all the time. So just learning the things we like and why we like them, and not just let's go to the movies and out to eat, because that's what relationships are about. Like, so really getting to know what you like, what you're attracted to, and why you're attracted to it. So it's just developing healthier relationship habits.
And putting a halt to those unwanted, like, you are who you attract. So if I'm attracting these certain type of guys, I just had to put a halt on my whole relationship life, because I'm like, you don't know what you're doing, and you are attracting something that is not very healthy for you. So at this point, it's not them, it's you. And so that's the most important thing about doing the work, is realizing that it's not everyone around you, it's you. And you have to figure out how to really tackle those triggers, how to deal with those triggers and things of that nature, so that you can stop attracting that type of energy to you.
So 2 things you said just now that made me giggle. One, you attract what you are. So then I thought about me. Oh, I must be an intellectual asshole. But then also you said, you know, oh, you don't know what you're doing. So you're probably attracting other people who don't know what you're doing, and you guys are like having a horrible time. The blind leading the blind.
Literally. And then I'm a know-it-all. So it's the blind leading the blind, and they're leading me, and I don't even know what I'm doing. So my mom always asks me, like, what did you do to him? What are you doing to these guys? Because I just drive guys crazy. And I think it's genuinely because I was attracting guys who were like F love, and then I would come with my soft demeanor and my caringness, and I would dig deep into their mind. And so I was making guys do the self work, and then as they're doing the self work, they're gravitating towards me more. And then when my unhealthy ass, but eventually I would tell him, I don't want to do this anymore. We would break up, and then the guy would just go crazy. Like, no, you have to be with me, this and the third. And I would just watch him go crazy and be like, oh, he does love me. And my mom would just be like, what are you doing? And I would ask myself too, what are you doing? And so, yeah, definitely got to put a halt on it. But like I said, if at 14 that was the first time I'd ever seen a relationship, then I just have been winging it all these years. So I think it's okay now at 23 to finally just put a halt to it and, you know, try to figure this out the right way.
So there's several things that I would like to unpack there. One, I think your mom saying to you, what are you doing? And First of all, fabulous lyrics. You make me better is what I'm hearing in my head, because that's what it sounds like. These men were still attracted to you even when you wanted to end the relationship, because something about you made them a better man.
Sure.
And then you bringing back the point about not seeing a healthy relationship until you were 14. I read a post the other day about your grandmother's 40 or 50-year marriage not being relationship goals if she was in a toxic relationship where she was restrained to the bedroom and the kitchen, or all this, like, being in a marriage as a means to survival is no longer the move. And don't keep blaming millennials for not getting married because we don't want to put up with this toxicity. So a lot of times I talk about, you know, the elders in my family. One of my grandmother's aunt called me today and just like made my day, and she was married for years before her husband passed. But that's something that I try to be aware of, that the people that I admire and the marriages that I admire, I've seen both examples of healthy and not so healthy marriages. So I do still aspire to be married, just wanting to have that in a healthier way. What are your thoughts on that? Like, I know you said you're taking a break from relationships right now, but is marriage something that you are working towards? Or right now you just like, I need baby steps. I'm just trying to be a healthy me before I can be a healthy mate?
Yeah, no, I am like, I would like somebody to get on their knees and propose to me right now. Like, marriage is my number one goal. I remember I did a professional interview, and they were asking me about my five-year plan, and I was very reluctant and very excited that I hope to be at least engaged in the next 5 years. And I said that's at the top of my list. It's the same thing as being a CEO, because both of them are very important to me. Being married is very important to me, and I know that it's important to me because just like I don't have a CEO in my family, I don't have marriage goals, or I don't even think there's a married couple in my family. I think my aunt and my uncle just got married. But the point is, that's something I didn't see. And so just like I visualized being successful and I visualized being a world traveler, even though I'd never seen that before, I visualized getting married. And that's like one of my key things. And so a lot of times I'm working on myself. Obviously, if I want to be married, then I can't be that girl that's like every time a situation arises, I'm saying I'm done. That's not the best way to handle it. And so that's what I'm really preparing myself for, is my next boyfriend, fiance, husband. That's something that's very important to me. I also realized that the reason why when situations arise, my solution for it is to break up, is because when I was younger and I did see unhealthy relationships, I would always be that girl that's like, that's not going to be me. That's not going to be me. That's not going to be me. And so then I would start to visualize what it would be like to date a guy who was healthy. And of course, in my fantasies, he was perfect. And we didn't argue and we didn't fight and things like that. So when I would get into a relationship with someone and we would have a disagreement, I'm like, you're reminding me of all those unhealthy relationships I saw when I was younger. And so I spoke to my best friend whose parents are married. And people think it's crazy, but her and her boyfriend have been together for almost 2 years now. They argue all the time and they've never broken up. And I was just so amazed by that. But she told me, like, I've seen my parents argue and they get over it, they make up, and they move forward. And so she learned at a very young age in the home that you can disagree with someone and the relationship is still healthy. But because that was something I didn't see, I thought if you argued or disagreed with a guy, or if you guys just didn't get along, you had to break up. And so, again, doing this work for 100 Other Halves, I'm able to talk to all these different women, and that's why I add women with positive relationships. But I get to add them into the mix because they're like, yeah, my dad did this, he did that. And so now I'm able to visualize more healthy relationships, whether it's father, daughter, or marriages. Because I definitely want to get married. Like, if my husband is watching this right now, say, but yeah, I'm like team marriage. I can't wait. It's going to be very exciting. I don't know if I'm going to have children, but
he very well might be watching. So whatever you want to say. Along those lines, with the 100 Other Halves project and just, you know, what you're seeing, I definitely appreciate that you added that point that people can disagree and still be in a relationship. That was something I was similar to you. Like, I would watch people, I'm like, why is he talking to her like that? Ain't nobody gonna talk like that. Even my friend was here with me a couple days ago, and I was asleep, and they moved closer to me, and I flinched, and it was like, are you afraid of me? And they were really offended. I was like, I'm asleep. Like, your body movement scared me. I didn't think you were going to hit me. I'm not afraid of you. But like in my mind, I don't allow people to hit me. And fortunately, I've never been in a relationship with anyone who has. But even I've been in relationships with people where I tell them, you too loud, bro. Bring it down. Like, I don't yell at you. You don't get to yell at me. I cannot tolerate those things because those are things that I saw that I didn't like.
Yeah.
I do think that I'm getting better at healthy disagreements.
Yeah.
Just saying, well, we can agree to disagree on that. Or, just watching my tone when I speak to people, because I want to make sure that I'm modeling the behavior that I wish to receive in a relationship. And that's been a really big goal of mine in friendships as well, because in addition to romantic relationships, I realized that the things that I was seeing modeled around me were not conducive to healthy friendships either. If I was watching a woman shut all her friends out to be with a man, that's not a healthy friendship anymore, because these people were here for you before that relationship. So just all these different types of things that father-daughter or father-son relationship plays into. Yeah. I have a friend who told me he will not date women who don't have a good relationship with their dad. And then I had to in turn say to myself, well, what kind of men are you attracting? The last 3 men that I had been in relationship with did not have great relationships with their father. One person, father lived in the same city as him and was dodging his phone calls. Another person, they became close when his father got cancer and they could smoke marijuana together. I was like, all right, that's too much for me. But, just different things.
Get it.
Being mindful of that as well. So what type of family structure does my future husband have before I
Yes.
Add that to your list. While you're doing your self-work, add that to your list, because I think that's something that we overlook. And I've seen that on Facebook a lot lately. Like, ask your man how he was raised, because the unhealthy habits in his household will spill over into your relationship. And I think that is
I can add something to that. The two guys, and again, zodiac sign here, they were both Leos, but the only guys that I've ever dated that had positive relationships with their fathers, the relationship was difficult for so many different reasons, but one of the key reasons was the one guy that I was dating, he was a Leo, and I realized that the reason why we were clashing so much was because I grew up with my mother. My mother was Superwoman, and so I would and like I said, she was able to give us everything we need. We didn't have to worry about the lights getting cut off. We had clothes on our back, shoes on our feet, the whole nine. But we also knew you can't ask mom for a $70 pair of jeans. And so I knew I had to work hard. So of course, as a child, I would just think like, oh my gosh, if we had a man in the house, it'll just be so much better because he can provide. He can be the fun parent. If I had a dad, maybe he would let me go to do these things. So I had so many high expectations for what it would be like to have a man present. And so my idea of a guy was the guy would come in and he would take control. He would be the head of the household. He would be very dominant. And so I started dating this guy, amazing guy, comes from amazing parents, but he came from a married household, a 2-parent household, and he learned compromise. He learned that he said his mother and his father were on the same pedestal. There were no gender roles. If he wanted something and he asked his mom and his mom said no, then his dad said no too. There was no dominant person. They both put in the work. So now you can imagine both of our ideologies when we started dating. I'm like, you call me first, you text me first. If you want to see me, you would tell me. If you want to see me, you will make it happen. And he would just be like, how about we both call each other? How about we both text each other? How about we both? And I'm just like, that's not the way I imagined it. I'm not interested in that. And I was young. I was very young, maybe 18. But the point is, like you said, the family structure is very important. And so I definitely always ask guys, what was your family structure like? Whether it was good or bad, just give me an idea so I can know what I'm working with. Am I working with the mama's boy? One guy that I was dating, his father was in the house, but he wasn't absent. When I say this man was the father of the house, I've seen his siblings run into his room like, she hit me, no, he hit me, and then he has to be the one to chastise everyone. I've seen his mother come into his room with money, and she's like, listen, this is how much money we have. These are the bills that need to be paid. How do you think we should go about this? I mean, he was making executive decisions from the top to the bottom as a father. And before I'd actually seen what his house was like, I would always think, why is this boy talking to me like this? Like, I would tell him all the time, don't talk to me like I'm a child. Don't tell me what to do. Don't, and I couldn't figure out why he moved like this or dealt like this. And then I went to his house. I spent one day there, and I was like, okay, it all makes sense. You're the man of the household, and you bring that into all your other relationships. And so I definitely agree. You have to figure out what kind of guy you're interested in, but then also be flexible, because you may lose someone that is very compatible with you just based off of your own experiences.
Perfect. I couldn't even say that any better at all. I want to talk about books. So you said Fatherless Daughters was one of the books that really drove you to have this whole 100 Other Halves movement. What are some other books and resources you'd like to share?
Sure. So, and I'm reading this one book now, and it's called What Happened to Daddy's Little Girl. So I had to close my eyes to read that title. I'll send you the name of it if you want to put it in like the notes of this. But I mean, I'll send you the author of both of those books. But one is called The Fatherless Daughter Project. It's by two women who went and spoke to different women all throughout the world about their relationships with their fathers. Very helpful book. It was a good mix of people them sharing stories, but then also giving stats. So it's very easy to read, very easy to turn to the page that fits you. One of the things that was difficult about it was that the book was written by two white women, I believe. And so that's why I wanted to do the project on my own, because I think their number for the amount of women that they spoke to whose fathers were incarcerated was like 18%. And I'm just throwing out a number. But when I talk to women of 100 Other Halves in the African American community, it's like 70% of us. And the list could keep going. The number could get higher as I talk to more women. And so it was great. It was a great resource. But I wanted to read something by a Black woman. And so that's why I'm now reading What Happens to Daddy's Little Girl. And so both of those books have been very helpful to me. Other books, as you're doing the self-work on yourself, like we just talked about, sometimes it's not just your romantic relationships where you realize they're impacted. Sometimes it's your business relationships. It's your friendships, like you said. And so some of the books that I like was Shonda Rhimes' book, The Year of Yes. So yeah, I always, give that to a few people because it has some good gems in there. But I always work in very male-dominated industries, but I didn't have experiences very young with males, and so I'm trying to really work on getting my voice and being confident. So that book was very helpful. I just finished I really like Gabrielle Union's book. Her book was helpful because she talked a lot about relationships, and it was very cool to see. She talks about how her father's relationships impacted some of the ones that she's had as well. And so, like I said, I'll give you after this a good list of all the different books that I've read. But like when you're doing the self-work, you want to make sure you're doing books that are very related to your relationship with your father or your mother or your grandparent, but then you also want to do some regular self-help books for business or friendships to make sure you're figuring out this in a more
Okay. So I think that was a great list. I haven't read Gabrielle Union's book just yet. I have read Year of Yes, and I do have like a laundry list of daddy issue related books that I need to get to. So I'm glad that you gave me titles.
Give me that list.
I sure can. I put it together to do some research and then just like got distracted. So I'm glad that you have two that you can recommend. Mine is just, title wise that seemed interesting to me. Something else I want to discuss. A lot of the people that I talk to had these aha moments outside of doing work like you do or work like I do, but in therapy. Have you ever explored therapy, been a recipient of it? Is it something you wish to do?
Yeah, so my mom was just telling me that she made a joke to her colleagues that no matter where I move in the world, I always find a therapist there. And so some people are really excited, like, oh, there's a shopping center by me or there's nice restaurants. And I'm always like, oh, there's a therapist near me. So I've been going to therapy since I was 18. I have seasonal affective disorder. So for about 6 years, I got depressed at the same time every year. That was January to May. So I usually see a see a therapist every spring, because it comes and there's nothing I can do about it, and I just have someone really help me through that tough time. But for me, therapy hasn't been very helpful for me yet, which is very unfortunate because I see a lot of women, Black women actually, who are going to therapy and they're having these aha moments. And I'm so jealous because I'm like, that has not happened for me. And I've even gotten to the point where the first therapy session, I'll tell my therapist, like, listen, this is some of the topics I really want to explore. And usually by the fourth or fifth session, I'm just not getting what I kind of want out of it or what I think I want. I actually found a therapist here in Rome, and so I was going to her as well. It wasn't very helpful for me. I think it's not helpful because I'm already very self-aware. And a lot of the therapists that I'm going to, they want to ask me, like, how does this make you feel? And I'm like, oh, I can tell you exactly how it makes me feel. So I guess I kind of need someone to dig a little deeper for me. And so that's what I'm looking for. But I tell everyone to seek therapy.
That's interesting. When I wasn't teaching, I was working in mental health, and the place that I currently work is like a combination of education and mental health in one building. And I was having that conversation. One of the behavior specialists said to me last week, "You're very therapeutic," and I'm like, "All right." I worked in the outpatient mental health clinic, and he was like, "You still do." So when I was listening to you just now, it made me think about my time in an outpatient mental health clinic and people's treatment plans and how active clients were or were not in the process of creating their treatment plans or following it. Similarly to the students I deal with in their IEP programs, you know, a lot of them like, "What's IEP?" I'm like, "What? Nobody told you? You got all these goals. We supposed to be working on these goals. You ain't on none of these goals." So I think what I like about your sharing out just now was that you are able to identify that being self-aware makes the therapy process difficult for you because the nature of the therapeutic relationship is going to take more work on the therapist's part for a patient like you who can do that surface work. But I think that not enough people are invested in the treatment process in that way. A lot of people just want to sit on the couch and vent and not really get much out of it other than, "Woo, I got it out." So I think that something else that brought to mind, I had a student like flip out last week. "I need a Black female therapist. I want a Black female therapist." You know, maybe you haven't found the therapist who has the life experience that can speak to you. You are well-traveled, you're still young, and you are self-aware. And a lot of times people get into these helping fields because they wish they had someone to help them when they were in need. So a lot of times they still have work to do themselves. So I hope that you do find a therapist that you feel comfortable with, that you can have that growth that you're looking for with. But I thank you for being transparent about that. That you still are an advocate for therapy, even though you haven't received what you think you need. And if anybody on the Black Girls Do Therapy listens to this particular episode, reach out to KyShon because she needs y'all.
I'm moving to Cali in July, and I hope I can find one out there.
You stay on the move.
I know, it's ridiculous.
We're gonna wrap up, but I do want to know what's next for you, KyShon Johnson, and what's next for the 100 Other Halves movement since you reached your 100 goal.
Yes. So what's next for me, as I just said, well, as you stated earlier, I'm studying abroad right now in Rome, Italy. So just traveling throughout Europe, in Africa a little bit. I'm going to do an international series out here where I get a bunch of different women that I meet, and I'm just going to have them tell in like 30 seconds about their relationship with their father and how it's impacted them. Another thing is I'm going to visit my host father for the first time since 2012. I'm very excited about that. He shouldn't be watching this. It's a surprise, but he doesn't know what I'm saying. So I'm flying to Spain in 2 weeks. Me and my host sister put this together, so I'm going to record that and kind of put that out there. He knows about the 100 Other Halves project. He cries about it. He loves that he was able to impact me in that way. So I'm really excited to be reunited with him and my family. So other than the international series and that, when I come back home, I hope to host at least one more event before I move to California. And once I get to California, it'll be all about content creation. Because I'll be working at LinkedIn. So I graduate in May, and then in July, I'll be starting my full-time position at LinkedIn. And I'm hoping that I can connect with people and work on content creation and getting some content out that will allow girls to really continue to kind of push this envelope of how they were impacted by their relationship with their father.
Well, if you're ever in need, I would love to be a part of that.
Of course.
And then I like what you said about doing an international series. I've actually reached out to a friend of mine who does a lot of international travel, and we're putting together a questionnaire for him to ask while he's traveling. And I wish I had thought to have extended that same invitation to you. If you're interested, just let me know. But just getting to know the cultural differences and what the role of fatherhood is, because he's always traveling new places.
Yeah.
And he brought it to me and was like, hey, I really want to work with you. You know, I want to get more Black guys to travel, but I really love what you're doing. And I'm like, hey, you know, I would love to know how fatherhood differs across the different continents and communities that you travel to. So that would be really interesting. I look forward to the international series of 100 Other Halves. And let me know.
Thank you.
Want to collaborate on that questionnaire and take it with you in all your travels? Please feel free.
Yes, we can definitely chat about that one off air. But thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. And I'm sure this won't be the last of our many conversations.
Are there any questions you have?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Any last notes you want to say to anybody who's listening, or where they can find you and follow up?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Key_Naomi, and that is KY_NAYOMI. You can also follow 100 Other Halves. Since I'm away, I'm doing something cool. Every time I see different events in different cities about women, I purchase a ticket and then I raffle it off through the 100 Other Halves Instagram page. So you could be one of the lucky winners. And other than that, my advice is always, always, always to remember that in order to love yourself, you have to learn yourself. So continue to do the work, put in the work to really get to know you so that you can love you and others can love you as well.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you.